Welcome to episode 4 of the Clear Vision Hockey Podcast. Today we're going to be going over playoffs, getting ready for playoffs. I know junior hockey, college, even minor hockey are getting into playoffs right about now. So we just wanted to go over kind of what it takes to be ready and maybe the difference between regular season and playoffs. Here again with my dad, Adam Benaldi, after an episode with Hunter Friesen, but back with just me and my dad. Dad, how's it going?
Good. This is a pretty exciting topic because it's it's something that you hear all the time, especially in hockey, playoff football, playoff baseball. It's mindset related. And I think it's important to get yourself prepared, because there's over preparation. Some people can get so worked up leading up to playoffs that they actually play worse, pulling them farther away from their goal. So we'll talk about some of that stuff and kind of what scouts and coaches are expecting, because I think it's important to understand the mindset of the coaching staff, the general manager, even ownership. There's so many people that are like counting on players to achieve. And if you're let's even say a GM, in my role, when I'm working with the team, it's like, I want to be out there. I want to help. I want to be on the bench. You want to do all those things and you just can't. And so having the right group of players and the right coaching staff that kind of prepare themselves all year really for playoffs, it kind of comes down to, this time, right? And you'll see it at all levels, right? And some people will fold and underachieve, and some people will come together and overachieve and make a run. And that's kind of what we're going to be chatting about.
Yeah. So kind of as a performance coach, let's say a player comes up to you and they're really nervous about going into playoffs. Even maybe your top scorer or starting goalie comes up to you and they just seem really nervous about going into playoffs. What's a couple things, or what do you tell them to kind of get them in the right headspace?
Yeah, a lot of the work, hopefully, if you've created the culture and you have prepared them, letting go of, you have to fix something. Everybody wants to quote unquote be better. And I think ultimately you just have to have faith in yourself that if you put the time in, you've put the work in, all you have to do is consider yourself like a warrior, and it's not time to, maybe find a way to float around or find, the easy way out. That's the biggest thing, is making sure that you understand we're about to go to war. There is something at the end of this game, and that's moving on, or the series, I should say, moving on. And, ultimately, obviously, if you get to the finals, but the goal of moving on is the thing that you're trying to take from the other team. And I think that it's not time to stress. It's just time to understand this is war. This is not just hockey. And I think that's a very, very maybe overused kind of, I guess, understanding. But when you look at what's different, every puck battle could be the difference. Two teams deserve to be there. That's what you have to remember. We could play in the regular season, and sometimes you're going to play a team that you have no business playing. You're way better than them. But by the time it gets to playoffs, they deserve to be there. And the little stuff isn't going to work. But the flip side of that is the little details are going to add up. And so that's the one thing I would tell a kid. To get back to your question, I would say make sure you focus on the details, which are corner battles, net front presence, 50-50 pucks, keeping your shifts short so that you can give 100%, because everybody wants to do more, and sometimes less is more. That's what's great about hockey. You don't have to beat the other team by yourself, and that's one of the things we'll get into. But I would just say, typically, trust your training, trust your practices. You've already done it. It's not the time to go try to fix something. It's the time to go out there and just go to war and let your training and everything you've done all year, play out.
Yeah. I think that's my biggest thing going into playoffs when, we've won state championships with the Coyotes and NAPL championship on the Bobcats. And for me, it was just knowing that everything I did leading up to that was correct. I felt prepared, whether it was doing my pre-practice warm-up, my cool-downs, all of that. I was already prepared leading up to the playoffs. I didn't have to change anything. So I felt confident and ready that it was basically a new season. My maybe failures or successes going in didn't matter. And it was a whole new season, but I've been prepared and I'm ready for this new mini season. So I guess just preparing from the start, because if you didn't prepare from the start and you're going to try to eat right, do your cool down, your warm up before playoffs, then you start to get kind of maybe anxious. But if you're prepared and ready, then it shouldn't be anything. It should just be the most fun part of the season.
Yeah, and you make a really good point. Some kids want to wait to quote unquote get better rest. Maybe they don't drink if they're talking about an over 21-year-old player or a college player. Maybe, okay, now I'm not going to drink, or now I'm going to eat better. And it's too late. And that will make you nervous. Like if you decide to wait until playoffs to do the right things, you are 100% going to be nervous out there because it's like cramming for a test. It is very hard to be confident in a test if you studied the night before. But if you're doing the homework, you're handing in everything on time, by the time the test comes, it's almost like you already know the answer. It's the exact same thing in hockey or really any sport. And so preparation really is the key. And I think if you want to be in the playoffs, it's an all the time thing. It's very, it's almost like one of the things I like to say is let's just focus on effort over outcome. You can let go of winning and just focus on how much effort you're going to give and how much you're prepared to give, and then let the result be and it's very hard to do, by the way. It's easy to say focus on effort over outcome because everybody wants to win, but it's 100% true. And it does start, truly, it starts probably in the off season. If you want to make a playoff run and you want to be prepared, it's how hard are you going to work in the off season? Are you going to increase your strength? Are you going to increase? This is why the best players in the world, you don't have to tell Sidney Crosby. You don't have to tell these, great players to prepare for playoffs. They've been doing it all year and through the offseason. So I think it's a really good point.
Yeah. And for me, like I said, everything kind of starts over, whether the goalie across the way maybe had better stats or whatever it might be. Everything's a blank slate, and I know I'm more prepared, so that makes me confident. I know in my head I'm more prepared than the goalie across the rink. I have a better chance of winning this game. We're going to win this game. And it's hard in college, right? Some minor hockey might be like a series, but for college, it's one and done most of the time. So it is a little more nerve-wracking, but at the same time, if you're prepared, you can just run through teams and get to your ultimate goal.
Yeah. And I think, we touched on a couple things, that can help people, along the way. And if you go back and listen to this, there's a couple little checkpoints that you can make. But there's also things that can hurt you. One of the things that you see a lot, really at all levels, is a player trying to do too much. They want to win so bad. They want to move on so bad, or in a one and done scenario, they feel like I have to do more. And then all of a sudden it becomes like almost like pulling them away from their goal because they're pressing or they're trying to beat too many players or they're doing things they didn't even do in the regular season. And so keeping your game simple, letting the games and the hits come to you, and understanding hockey is a very fluid sport. And if you try to manufacture goals or manufacture hits, you will get beat, especially by an equal team. And so it's that controlled chaos that makes hockey so beautiful, but you have to understand that team hockey wins championships. Very, very seldom. And honestly, it's one of the reasons that the Oilers have struggled. McDavid is always unbelievable. And there's always a quote unquote McDavid on a team that gets beat. And you wonder, how do they get beat with the best player in this division or the best player in this league? You'll see a team that plays a better team game and commits to a system or commits to the effort. They're going to outwork the other team. We've heard all these cliches, but that's something that if every player commits that I'm just going to be a great teammate and I'm going to be a great team player, imagine what that team could achieve, as opposed to waiting for, little Johnny, who has the most goals, to try to win a playoff game, especially. It just doesn't happen. And so I think ultimately that's a very, very important thing. Of the things that could hurt you, floating, of course, when in doubt, get your feet going. That's playoff hockey, right? To get open. And great teams work harder without the puck. That's another, that's a very, very big thing, even in like football. If you, let's say, look at like a team that has a scrambling quarterback, let's say like Baltimore, for example, Lamar Jackson goes moving. If the receiver watches him, then he gets sacked. Josh Allen, same things. Receivers have to work to make great plays happen without the ball, without the puck. And so those are the kind of things I think that if you're going into a playoff run, be great without the puck, and so that's definitely and for you, for a goaltender, would you say that you've probably over hyped yourself up? Has it ever happened to you where you get like so wanting to win and so wanting to play your best hockey that it actually could hurt you?
Yeah, I think that not just in playoffs, but that can happen all the time. But for me, it is realizing it's happening, understanding maybe why it's happening. A lot of the time I understand it's because I care so much. So kind of letting that go, say I do care, I know I care. That's always going to be there. But then trying to get the butterflies to fly in formation, as they say, just kind of settle down. And it may take a period or two. You may spit out some rebounds, but kind of understanding why it's happening and knowing it's a good thing, and then using that to kind of move forward with the game is a big help that I've kind of noticed. Knowing it's not always a bad thing that I'm amped up, just trying to get it calm and use it towards the right things. And especially in playoffs, right? Like ultimately, in my head, it's just about winning the game. So it could be 6-5, 1-0. Like it's just make the next save, make the last save, and just try to get the emotions in check to be able to win that game.
Right. And again, obviously, I'm sure there's a lot of coaches and kids out there having this exact same conversation, right? You can just see when the adrenaline is taking over and the mind is not in control anymore. And one of the things too, and it's an old story now, but Gretzky tells the story of, and for those younger players, you won't remember how dominant the New York Islander teams were of the 80s. And then after that, how dominant the Edmonton Oilers teams were. And what people forget is that Edmonton was swept by an older, kind of more mature Islander team when the Islanders were in their dynasty. And Gretzky tells the story of walking by the locker room and seeing an exhausted Islander team literally licking their wounds, unable to undress, just physically and mentally exhausted.
And he was thinking they were going to be celebrating.
Yeah.
Because they just won the cup.
And they didn't have even the energy to celebrate. And he walked by in his, suit, getting to the bus, and he realized like that's what a Stanley Cup champion looks like. And I think you can't get ahead of yourself. You can't start thinking about celebrations. You have to think about pain and sacrifice and what you're willing to give to this thing that you want so bad, not what you want, but more what you're willing to give. And I think that that's a very, very important piece of this, that playoffs can get in your way. The goal can get in your way. And you let go of the process and you let go of the pain and the sacrifice. And then all of a sudden you're left with regret. And that's the worst emotion in the world. Like losing, like you don't have to win. It's the truth. You just have to know you gave and if the better team wins, that's fine. But you never want to be the team that wishes they had something or like feels like they had something left to give. And so I think that's a really, really important piece for anybody that's listening to this as they go into their playoff run or they're even in the middle of it. What are you willing to give for the thing that you want? You know, and obviously certain hockey players, I mean, you see people, you know, the things that you hear about after playoff runs, I mean, punctured lungs and broken ribs and cracked bones and sternum. I mean, it's insane what people go through. But then there's sometimes some people that are still playing the game safe. And then, you know, this is, you know, I always tell when I'm in a locker room, I always say you're wearing armor for a reason. It's armor. You are armored up. And it's meant to be a physical game. And it is meant every good team is hurting by the playoffs. And by the end, if you can hold that cup up or even hold your head up high, it's worth every second. And so
I think that comes from preparation. If you can somehow outskill a season to the finals, maybe your preparation or lack thereof catches up with you in the end and you end up losing in the finals. And that was where the regret will come, knowing you didn't do everything. But if you do know you did everything you could, and maybe there were some lessons you needed to learn through maybe losing in the finals, whatever it might be, but you can look at that a much more helpful way than if you were unprepared and just try to skill your way through playoff runs. If you're prepared and you know you're prepared and there's things you have to do change, you can look at that loss as learning, not so much as a regret to maybe you didn't do what you knew you needed to do to win.
Yeah. And bottom line, to wrap this up, some of you, the preparation for this year is already gone by you. So all you have left is what you're willing to give and how hard you can go, because the top defensemen are going to go from playing 20 minutes to 30 to even 40 minutes. You know, benches are going to get shorter. Intensity is going to be amped up. And you just have to realize that between shifts, between periods, it's hydrate, it's fuel, it's reset mentally, whatever you have to do, because it is war. And I think that, you know, we're doing these podcasts to kind of help people in many different ways, but ultimately like mentally prepare, understand what you're dealing with, relax. It is still just a game. And if you don't win, you learn. And if you focus on effort over outcome, these things can put you in a much better headspace. And so as far as I'm concerned, Ant, I think we've given them a good message. I think you've achieved a lot in different playoff runs and, you know, state champions. And I think you've given some really good advice for goalies in particular. And I think we'll continue on this journey in our next couple episodes.
Yeah. And for everyone going to the playoffs, good luck. Send us DMs, maybe how it goes. Some saves, some highlights, some goals that you get. Send us some highlights. We'll post it on our socials. And good luck to everyone going in the playoffs.
Sounds good. Thank you. Good luck out there.